Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a good night of rest, and maybe some of you also explored Luxembourg, even though the weather was not that nice. And welcome to the second day, which won't be as long. And well, I ordered the bad weather so that you don't feel bad about being inside. So this morning, before we start with the presentation over here, one organizational thing, there is an ODRL workshop at 9:30, so which is starting right now, and our colleague over there is raising the hand. There's a door, so if you're interested in the workshop, it's that direction. For the people participating in the hackathon, note the door as well, because there will be something later on around 11:30, so I'll announce that in the course of the day, where you should be gathering over there as well, probably in front of the jury, and Pierre will tell you if you have done a good job or not. I hope you, but I'm 100% convinced you all have done a good job. So, first topic this morning, 9:30, is a Dataspace connector in TEE and beyond, making a Dataspace connector confidential. And I'm really happy to welcome 3 people over here. Well, actually 2 people over here and 1 person remotely. Probably the presenters that had the longest journey over here. So we have Miki Kanno. She's manager at NTT Data and recently in charge of research and development related to data exchange. We have Yuji Hagiwara, platform engineer at NTT Data, and I think remotely is Koki Mitani. He's a senior research engineer of social laboratories, and well, he's working on collaborative innovation, building global infrastructure for data sharing between businesses. So, please welcome our 3 colleagues from Japan. Thank you. Stage is yours.
So good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm very glad to be here today. Let me introduce first. I'm Miki Kanno from NTT Data and manager of Dataspace's R&D activities. So today, we will talk about Dataspace connector in TEE and beyond, making a Dataspace connector confidential. So in these presentations, 3 persons, I and Hagiwara-san and Mitani-san will have a presentation today. And Mitani-san will have a presentation from online and from Japan. Yeah, it's exciting. So could you introduce yourself, Hagiwara-san?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Yuji Hagiwara from NTT Data. And I'm a platform engineer, and I'm responsible for developing and researching technology to promote data collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mitani-san, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. My name is Koki Mitani, Senior Research Engineer of NTT. I'm working on open and collaborative innovation for building global infrastructure for data sharing between businesses. Today I'm joining from Tokyo remotely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is today's agenda. This presentation is online and in-person presentation and discussion style. So first, I will talk about the importance of the confidentiality of Dataspace connector. And second, Hagiwara-san will talk about deep dive analysis of threats and countermeasures in the use of EDC-based connectors. And then Mitani-san will talk about the insights, Dataspace connector in TE and beyond. And lastly, we would like to discuss some questions with your audience in the last topic. So let's get started. So NTT Group is working on the development of international dataspace ecosystems that interconnects dataspaces. So this is a conceptual diagram of dataspace ecosystems. There are various industries and companies in the data space ecosystems. And various companies users and industry users form data space as a data-driven ecosystem. So we, LTT Group, will also deploy connectors in the cloud for ease of use and provide assets for ease of use by enterprises. So to exchange data between companies and industries, Dataspace Connector is a software to connect to Dataspace and is also key to realize data sovereignty. So how do you use connectors in a way that protects the data sovereignty controls? So in protecting data sovereignty, we think that there are two broad patterns of protecting connectors while protecting the control authority of data sovereignty. It means not physical connector placement. So here is the first pattern, is self-enforcement of data sovereignty control. For example, the company moves connectors in the company's factory. So if the company manages their own connectors, so the connectors can be trusted, but the management cost will be a lot. So here is the first pattern. Let me give you another pattern. So here is the second pattern. So not self-enforcement of data sovereignty control partly or completely. So this is often the case when you want to manage operations easier without incurring management costs. So for example, the company wants to run the connector on the cloud, such as Cloud Vendor B, or a company may use easy-to-use connector collection tools from external vendors, or a company may use connectors partly within their own controls. So in order to use connectors in a way protect data sovereignty, we think that it is very important to think about what pattern will you use when you use connectors. So let's look at the possibility for using connectors. So data providers and consumers exchange data using Dataspace connectors. The cloud computing service is very useful to realize flexibility and to make DC easy to use. The confidentiality of DC will be more and more important as the number of cases that multiple stakeholders are involved to exchange sensitive data increases. So Dataspace connectors consist of two planes. Control planes manage, control the usage. On the other hand, data planes carry their actual data. So data plane is where the data flows. So of course, it has to be protected. But control plane also has to be protected. So using connectors in the cloud is very convenient and very easy to use. But if you want to coordinate more sensitive data, that is very important. You may think that, and you may worry that something might happen in the cloud. But if we can control the connectors, where to focus on, how to use it, so we can use connectors with peace of mind. So let's look at what to protect from where and how in Hagiwara-san's part.
Okay, thank you for speaking, Kanno-san. And it's my turn to speak about security consideration of Dataspace connector. Okay. This slide shows what kind of information EDC is handling with, and it indicates that Dataspace connector must handle with some kind of information as well as actual data. For example, number 5, contract agreement is agreement for data sharing between two participants, and it contains a policy. So I can say that it's something like a contract document in real world. Then let me introduce an example to show the importance of that, not only actual data, but also other information in the Dataspace connector must be kept secure. In this example, there are 3 participants in the Dataspace: Alice and Bob and Mallory. And we assume that Alice and Bob made a contract agreement that Alice permit Bob to display Alice's data. And then we assume that Mallory attacks Alice's Dataspace connector to tamper with their contract agreement. And let me see. This attack make 2 bad results. First is Bob is a proper data consumer, but Bob cannot access the Alice data because the data consumer in contract agreement is tampered. And second is Mallory is attacker and unexpected user, but Mallory can access the Alice data, even though Mallory must not be able to access the data. So, and I'd like to discuss about security risks around the Dataspace connector. And we expect that we need to identify security risks other than that example. And we are considering some perspective to identify security risks. There are perspectives. First, left side, what kind of information and what kind of threats and who will be potential adversary and techniques to exploit and how detectable the attack is, and last, how large result the attack made. Some of these perspectives are listed from known issues, known idea. For example, we listed information from our observation of EDC implementation. But actually, we think that these perspectives are not complete so far. So we'd like to discuss how should we identify security risks on Dataspace connector. And then the example I mentioned could be mapped on these perspectives. In the example, manually tamper with contract agreement and store data. And manually could be a participant of Dataspace, but also it can be just a third party. And that case, it's detectable if the contract log is recorded, but it may be impossible to detect if the log is not recorded. And next, I'd like to mention that importance of considering and analyzing potential adversary. That the reason is because techniques to exploit and mitigation them are totally different for each adversary. Let me show another example. In this example, the attacker wants to tamper with a contract agreement. And if the attacker is just a third party, it may attempt to find and exploit vulnerability because it can only attack from outsider. It's just outsider. In this case, we can mitigate them by, for example, to develop system and that have less attack surface. On the other hand, if the attacker is a connector operator such as cloud vendor, the situation became complicated. It may have the proper privilege and it may be administrator of the DB, so it may use the privilege to tamper with the DB. It's hard to prevent the attack such like that to use the same mitigation as first case. So we need other mitigation. In my talk, I mentioned the importance to consider the security of connector and the perspective to identify risks. But actually, we think that it's hard to make it perfect at a bound. And it may be dependent on the situation and priorities. That's why it is important to assess and deal with risks properly. At this time, we are considering that threats causing data leakage, threats causing to spoil contract, and threats with less detectabilities are more critical than other risks. And we'd like to make effort to deal with risks in order. So, okay, that's all my talk. So next, Mitani-san from Japan will talk about protection by TE. So Mitani-san, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Hagiwara-san. So from next slide, Koki Mitani, and I will talk from next slide. From this slide, I'd like to talk about a simple use case for mitigating some risk related to key features of connectors. For preventing data from being leaked when the contract information in the connector is tampered with, we need to consider protecting not only the data plane, but also the control plane. And we are considering a concept to protect connector by using Trusted Execution Environment, EE. EE can be used for setting up hardware-supported isolated runtime environment. And TEE offers remote attestation with proof of the integrity of the initial software component to prove the correct setup. Please look at the picture in this slide. In this picture, participant A and participant B exchange data by using connector. And in this picture, there are several points to protect. First one is ID provider. The second one is connector. And third one is contract database. And fourth one is data source. And fifth one is data feed. And these components are classified into the control plane and data plane. So from next slide, I'd like to talk about two different scenarios to protect connector by using trusted execution environment. So could you please go to the next slide? So this slide shows the first scenario. Protect your connector by TE. So when using a third-party connector on the cloud, the user may need additional protection for preventing data from being provided illegally. By using the remote attestation feature of TE, the user can verify whether the control plane configuration of the third-party connector on the cloud is correct. In this slide, on the left side, the one user doing the remote attestation to the connector on the cloud. And for this scenario, we have found one more additional consideration. Could you please go to the next slide? It is about multi-tenancy scenario. For the use cases where connector used by multiple users may be operated on the same cloud infrastructure. Remote attestation for connectors in multi-tenant configuration needs to be considered. And we have found the related discussion in the document. It is the IDS difference architecture model. In that picture, on the bottom right of this picture, there is a related discussion. So from next slide, I'd like to talk about the second scenario. Could you please go to the next slide? Thank you very much. The next scenario is protect your shared data in use by TE. When the user shares the data to the other participants, the user may need enforcement of data usage control to prevent the data from being handled improperly. By using the remote attestation feature of TE, the user can verify whether the configuration of the control plane and the data streams of the other parties connector are correct. From these two scenarios, we have found some findings, and in the next slide, I'd like to explain about key 4 findings. Could you please go to the next slide? Thank you very much. So this slide shows 4 findings. First one is in the multi-stakeholder case, remote attestation by TE can be used to mitigate some risk. Depending on the system structure and operational structure, there are several variations of potential outcomes. And the second one is service provider needs to consider to provide an option to apply TE for adding value to their service, such as connector on the cloud and so on. And due to the cost of TE, we assume that TE will be applied to some use cases, such as financial use cases and the use cases which use extremely sensitive data. And third point is about the scenario 2. We think that the international standardization of remote attestation between stakeholders and connectors may need. And fourth point is about the picture on the bottom right. TE-related scenario can also be applicable to use cases where multiple data providers and application providers participate into the data. The next slide is my last slide. So today, I would like to have an open discussion about use cases of TE. And today, we would like to have an open discussion about these 5 topics. First one is, are you working on use cases that involve sensitive data? And second one is, are you working on use cases that utilize data from multiple companies? Are you already providing connector services on the cloud? And are you aware of the need of TE? Do you think we need some standardization of remote attestation regarding the use of connectors with TE? And do you see any potential in the future of connector TE integration? So this is the last slide on my part. Kanno-san, could you please continue the discussion?
Thank you, Mitani-san. So this is discussion time. So I will read each question. If the answer is yes, could you raise your hand? So our first question is, are you working on use cases that involve sensitive data? If the answer is yes, could you please raise your hand? Oh, thank you. So there are many people have the use cases that are sensitive data. Thank you so much. Okay. Next question is, are you working on use cases that utilizes data from multiple companies? If yes, could you raise your hand? Oh, thank you so much. There are so many people deal with multiple companies. That's interesting. So the third question and fourth question is very have interest for us. So here is Mitani-san's previous slide. The blue box are some questions. The third question is that, are you already providing connectors services? Are you aware of the need for TE? If yes, could you please raise your hand? Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. So, okay, I'd like to talk to you later. Okay, yeah, thank you. And do you think we need some standardization of remote attestation regarding the use of connectors with TEs? If yes, there are so many people. So could you someone introduce the details about the questions? Anyone? Yeah, thank you so much. But we think that standardization is very important for using Dataspace connectors. Thank you. So, and last question is that, so do you see any potential in the future of connector T integration? If yes, could you please raise your hand? Okay, thank you so much. So if possible, could you give me some comments? And the question is okay. Feel free to ask questions.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the presentation. So Christoph Mertens from IDSA. It's maybe more a comment to also make you aware. So the concept is very nice and interesting. I really think we need to push forward for the standardization and also the integration different connector implementations. I collaborated with Intel already quite a while ago to integrate SGX in connector implementations. So in case you would be interested in talking also with them on the current implementation state of play, I would be glad to connect you here.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think the future of TE, we want to think about it. And of course, we would like to think about how to use and how to deploy and how to develop data spaces connectors. But we'd like to talk about this topic in near future and later after my presentation, of course. So is there any questions? Thank you.
Sorry, so I have 2 questions.
Yes, please.
Well, 3 questions.
Yes, please.
So first of all, you talk about international standardization. At what sort of level? Is this the kind of Eclipse sort of standard work, or is this taking it to some other level of standardization? What are you thinking?
So at this time, we don't confirm the strategy and so on, but we want to consider and what to do in the next step and so on, and what should we do, focusing the topic and so on, ideas and so on. But we think that it is important to think about the standardization of data space connectors and remote attestation, etc.
So a quick comment on that. I mean, obviously, it seems to make sense to link that up with the work that Gaia-X and IDSA, I think, are already doing more generally around standardization, with the potential of that to be taken to ISO, IEC, JDC1, I guess, and so on. So that makes sense because to me, it feels like it's about putting together a package of important details. But if you are wanting other links, there's some of us here who've got links to JDC1, ISO, IEC. So just to say that. So that's the first question. The second thing is, I mean, what you're saying is you'd like to get this as an ongoing conversation. You're raising this issue, and you'd like to be bringing others in to see how to take that forward. What are your thoughts about how that conversation might be continued?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So in near future, there's many data contain sensitive data exchange between companies and industries. So we should consider how to protect the data, and of course in the data space connectors, and of course control plane, data plane is, so data flows, it has to be protected, but control plane is very important. So we think that we should think that where to focus, what to focus, how to focus, and so on, dealing with sensitive data, I think.
Yes, I mean, I guess it's again talking with Gaia-X and so on about making that part of the conversation, but in terms of taking it forward, I have a specific interest. I'm going to be talking after this a little bit about minimal interoperability mechanisms that we're involved in with Open and Agile Smart Cities. And it so happens that one piece of work we're just starting is about security. And what we're not trying to do here is the kind of level that Gaia-X and so on are dealing with, but to provide some basic solid advice to cities and communities around these issues. And specifically in our objectives, we mention about the control plane and how that can be done. And what we're trying to do is to think about what are the issues. So when you are able to kind of formalize a place for discussing and taking this issue forward more widely, I'd be very interested in being a little part of that conversation and making sure it's fed back into our minimal interoperability mechanisms. But thank you for raising it. It's clearly a really important issue.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody has questions? Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for this very, very insightful presentation. And I think it clearly underlines that we're not just dealing with a local issue, but it clearly underlines the international nature of what we're doing over here. So thanks again for that one.